Hi everyone, my name's Nia, and me and my partner Kailene are going to be presenting on critical race theory and why it matters and why you should care. And before we begin, I just wanted to give a little rundown on what critical race theory is and why we chose to talk about it. So, at its core, critical race theory is a way of looking at how race and racism are not just about individual attitudes and biases, but are often built into systems like our laws, our schools, and even our workplaces. And it helps us understand why racial inequalities persist, even when most people can agree that racism is fundamentally wrong. This matters because if we only think about racism as a personal bias, we miss the bigger picture. And CRT asks us to consider how history and policy shape the opportunities people have today. For example, differences in education, our housing, and even our criminal justice outcomes. The image on the slide shows a black hand and a white hand reaching for the globe, and to me, this represents both the impact of racial divisions and the possibility of shared responsibility. And CRT encourages us to recognize inequalities, but also to find solutions that make systems fair for everyone. And throughout our presentation, we'll go into key ideas and provide examples and show why this framework is relevant to all of us. And understanding CRT isn't necessarily about assigning blame. It's more about building awareness and creating a society where opportunity is more equal.
Victor Ray is a professor of African Studies, Sociology, and Criminology at the University of Iowa, as well as a non-resident senior individual at the Brookings Institution. He is also an active public scholar. He has published in journals such as the New York Times, Time, CNN, The Washington Post, Harvard Business Review, and Boston Review. In his adolescent age, he experienced first-hand racism over a misunderstanding. He was out in public with his black father, and many individuals thought Mr. Ray was not related to him. As a result of being the only light-skinned individual in his family, it caused people to assume and question his relationship with his family. It gave him an experience and stirred up many experiences one should never go through. Main ideas. There are three main ideas in this text. The first one, personal stories. Second, critical race theory exposes hidden forms of discrimination. And lastly, political attacks on criminal race theory. Personal stories. Ray expresses his personal experience on how racism isn't just individual, but it's built into American society and its institutions. CRT exposes hidden forms of discrimination. Their critical race theory reveals the hidden ways on how racism is built into laws and systems. By race-neutral police. The laws in 1994 crime bill harmed black communities even though they portrayed neutral on the surface. Political attacks on CRT. Ray passionately speaks about the backlash against CRT maintaining power. The issue is people are informed about real race issues because of banning books and censoring discussions that informs others.
Hi everyone, my name's Nia, and today I'll be talking about new research on critical race theory and what it tells us about racial progress in society today. To start, critical race theory, or CRT, was originally developed to explain racial inequalities in law and education. It was meant to be a tool to help us understand how racism is not just individual prejudice, but something that happens systemically and is embedded into our policies. Over time, CRT has been kind of reshaped and often misunderstood. Instead of being seen as a framework to analyze structural racism, it's been pulled into wider debates about gender equity and gender role issues. And while those topics are definitely equally as important, this mischaracterization sometimes hides CRT's real purpose, which is to give us a way to understand and challenge systemic racism. In recent years, actually, CRT has faced heavily political backlash, with some states even trying to ban it from being used in classrooms and classroom discussions. But research shows that when used correctly, CRT helps educators and policymakers have honest conversations about inequality and create solutions for more inclusive institutions. Scholars emphasize that it's essential to push back against this misinformation and keep all discussions about CRT based in fact and have evidence to back it. So progress isn't, like derailed by fear or misinterpretation, or even like misrepresentation. Yeah, so overall, CRT is not about creating division. It's about equipping us with the tools to better understand our history and what's happening in the present. By looking at evidence and staying open to dialogue, society has a much better chance to make real and lasting progress. Okay, now that we've into the research, we're going to move into a few discussion questions. The first question is, how might schools, workplaces, and laws reinforce racial bias without explicitly using racist language? So oftentimes this happens in very subtle ways. For example, school testing or school curriculums may leave out diverse perspectives, or in a workplace, hiring may favor certain names or networks. And in these scenarios, nothing is said outright or in writing, but the impact still disadvantages certain groups. And that's the kind of hidden bias that CRT wants us to focus our attention on. The second question is, why is CRT and even just talking about it often seen as threatening? So the truth is that CRT challenges power structures and calls out inequality. And in political spaces, these challenges aren't things that people want to face or talk about. And for those who benefit from the status quo, this can feel like uncomfortable or even dangerous to talk about. And this reaction shows us that conversations about equity are really more conversations about power and power imbalances. The third question is, why is storytelling so important in understanding racism, as we saw in Ray's story? So statistics can show trends, but stories make these trends more personal and real. And being able to hear from someone's lived experience, like being profiled or facing microaggressions, can help us see that racism is not just a theory or something that we see in textbooks, but more an ongoing reality, even in today's society. And storytelling allows us to build empathy, which is very crucial for change in our society. So yeah, together these questions remind us that racism isn't always necessarily visible, but that resistance to CRT reveals deeper struggles over power, and that hearing from other people's stories connects us to the human side of inequality and allows us to face these challenges and imbalances more head on. Thank you.